Okay, so we've got a new ozone generator built here. Could you explain a little bit what kind of an ozone system this is?
This is an ozone generating system that produces 80 grams per hour of ozone from oxygen. It has a built-in oxygen concentrator, which produces 85 to 95% oxygen from compressed air.
Okay, so if I turn the system on, what exactly is happening when we turn it on?
This starts the air feed to the oxygen concentrator, and the oxygen concentrator begins cycling to remove all the nitrogen from the air. We're not producing any ozone yet, but in this mode, in this way, you can run the system without producing ozone and get your pressures and flows and things like that squared away, configured.
Okay, so once I turn the ozone generator on, it would start making ozone?
Yes, at this moment we have, this particular system has 4 valves to deliver ozone to 4 different locations. A system can be built to deliver ozone to any number of locations, but at this moment we have 4 valves. Each one is calling for ozone, so when we have the system on and the ozone generator switch on, as these valves are calling for ozone, it's going to automatically start up and produce ozone, and that ozone will be delivered to each of the 4 locations.
Okay, so we've got an ozone output adjust. How does that work?
That sets the amount of power that the ozone generator uses to produce ozone. And basically it's a dial that you can turn up and down to produce more or less ozone.
Okay.
That sets the pressure that's right on this pressure gauge, and that's the amount of oxygen pressure you have feeding the ozone cell.
Okay, so we've got some flow going through here. Let's go take a look at the side to see where this ozone is going. Okay, so we're over at the right-hand side of the machine here. I see we've got 4 different flow meters. Looks like just one of these is hooked up to a room.
Yeah, and this particular system has 4 outputs to go to 4 different locations. A machine can be built and configured to go to any number of locations, and each location can get a different amount of ozone, a different amount of flow of ozone, and you can set that with these dials here, as each location might have different requirements.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the HMI interface. Where should we get started on explaining this?
So we have indicators on here that tell you what each component of the machine is doing. At this moment, the oxygen generator is turned off, and we can turn that on with the system switch, or it will start off. The oxygen concentrator will start automatically when any particular valve calls for ozone for that particular location. And at that time, the ozone generator will also start in sequence.
Okay, so I just turned the ozone switch on and I see the green go lights turning on now. So now it's telling me that it's making ozone and it's going out those 4 different outputs.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a big list of information here. Could you explain what that's from?
This here is a log of all the activity of the system. So it would show when each valve has opened or closed. It would show when the ozone generator started. If any alarms should happen to occur, those would be shown on this list. And all of this data is also logged to a USB flash drive that you can take out and record that data or review that data at a later time.
Okay, so we're ready to go to another screen then? All right, so if I press all valves, what is that showing?
This is a screen that shows the status of each of the individual valves. Now, this particular system has 4. There can be any number of valves on this screen. And From this screen, you can access the settings for each individual valve.
Yeah, show me how to do that.
This is the screen for valve A. And valve A has 3 different parameters that can control when the valve runs. And this same screen applies to each of the valves, no matter how many valves you have. Each one can be individually configured to run based on these different parameters.
Okay, I see. So we've got one group here. This can be controlled by the ozone sensor.
Yes, an ozone sensor or an ozone switch, which would have a sensor and just a simple on-off signal. An ozone sensor would have a signal that varies according to ozone level in the area. So in the area where we're delivering ozone from valve A, we would have a sensor that reads the ozone level. And if it's a sensor that does, in fact, measure the ozone level and give us a signal of that ozone level, that would be displayed here.
Okay, so that's reading ozone level in parts per million.
Yes.
All right, and then in the middle here, we've got a cycle timer. How does that work?
That timer simply turns the valve on for a certain amount of time and off for a certain amount of time.
Okay,
And that can be set for any number of minutes of on time and any number of minutes of off time.
I see. So if I just press on the on time here, I can set a different time. This- Okay, so set it for 700 minutes. If I wanted 7, well, that's really easy. All right, so that's just cycling on and off. What's the next timer, the time clock? How does that work?
This is a time clock that turns the valve on and off at different times of day. There's a different setting for each day of the week. And it would be set to turn on at a particular time of day and then off at a particular time of day. In this way, you could configure the valve to only fumigate during a time of day, for example, when the room is empty, when there are no people around. And it could turn off before anyone arrives for work, for example, so that the ozone level has time to come down before the beginning of the day.
So do these timers work together? Can you have it run by the ozone level and this time clock?
Yes, any one of these 3 functions can be set to turn the valve off. Since these are each set to a disabled mode, none of these functions is turning the valve off, and that's why at this moment the valve is on, and it will stay on.
Okay. So when I make it active, what is that doing there?
Now the time clock is controlling the valve, and since we're at a time of day, shown here on the clock, where the valve is set to be off, the valve will not be on.
Okay, so that gives you a lot of flexibility in being able to control ozone levels.
All of this may seem a bit confusing. There is a help screen, and you can hit the help button here. And this explains in detail how each of the 3 functions works.
That's very helpful. Okay, so we've got a couple of other buttons here. We got data and minutes, data and hours. What am I seeing here now?
This is a trend graph screen that shows the ozone level at each location over the course of time.
Okay.
And this assumes that you're using a sensor at the location, a sensor that gives us a feedback of the ozone level and not just a simple on-off signal.
Mm-hmm.
If you have that sensor and you have a signal and you're using that function, which is optional, then this trend graph will show an up and down trend for each of the locations.
Okay. And the last one here just gives you a broader perspective on hours.
Yes, this shows where this minutes screen shows the data shows about 4 minutes worth of data on the screen, and we can scroll back or scroll forward. But this gives us a really zoomed in view of the ozone level at each location. If we want a better overview of what's happened over the past 4 hours, we would show the hour screen, and that shows you what the ozone level has been in the past 4 hours.
Okay. And this here is giving you every time a valve opens, it adds another line on this screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. So this machine will send ozone to 4 different rooms. And if I had 10 rooms, or if I wanted ozone and water, is that something that you could do for me as well?
Yeah, it can be custom built to deliver ozone to any number of locations as needed, and to deliver any amount of ozone needed to each of those locations, including injecting ozone into water at a controlled rate based on dissolved ozone level or ORP level. Also, it can be built to produce any amount of ozone as required for your location. So where this one produces a maximum of 80 grams per hour, it can be built to produce anywhere from 10 to hundreds of grams per hour.
Okay, well, I'm interested in knowing how a system could be used to inject ozone in water. Maybe we'll have to do that in the next video.
Yes.